Welcome back to Nebraska Nightly here on the Wilson Dittman Sports Channel, where you can get everything related to Nebraska, whether that's recruiting, whether that's players, whether that's staff, right here on the channel. So make sure to hit the subscribe button and put a like on the video if you like the content and you want to see more. So let's get into the news. I want to start off immediately with a couple of our transfer gets that we got this current week. First off, Walter Rouse from Stanford, offensive tackle. And it is Rouse. I called him Walter Rousey in the last video. It is Rouse. So, first off, I mean, he's 6'6", 320. I mean, this dude is a massive, massive tackle, but he's athletic. And you watch his film, even dated back to when he was a freshman. It's playing at Stanford. I mean, this dude is clearly just stands out on the field from the rest of the O-line. I watched a bunch of his film during the week. Again, really good in pass pro. I'd say a lot more. He's a lot better in pass pro than he is in the run game, but he's still a really good body on the offensive line, instant starter. I told you guys that I thought he was the biggest transfer need, and not only, but he would have been the biggest transfer get of our class, and I still say that. He's massive. I was looking on ESPN, and I found this interesting. I was looking at ESPN, and I was looking at their draft rankings, where they do every year, where they just rank all the players based on their skill and where they think they're going to go in the NFL draft. And they rated Walter Rouse as the 20th best offensive tackle in the draft. So we know that Walter Rouse isn't in the draft, but it's crazy to think, compared to all those guys who are going pro, that he was number 20 amongst all of them. That speaks a lot. He instantly becomes the best guy on our line. He's an instant starter. I want to go over his accolades really quick here. He was a Campbell Trophy finalist this year. He's an honorable mention for All Pac-12, Senior Bowl watch list, Shrine Bowl watch list, and preseason All Pac-12 third team by Athlon. So this is a guy who, again, the accolades don't really tell you that much, honestly. But I mean, you look at his production. You talk to anybody around the Stanford program. I mean, all the Stanford fans, all the Stanford coaches, they were sad to see him go. This dude has been a rock on their O-line for the last 3 years where he started. He's a big get. Oklahoma really wanted him. Iowa really got him, and Roll got him to Nebraska. So that was big. I really wanted to mention something interesting, and they talked about this on the radio a little bit on 620. But Walter Rouse, when he committed, he basically was talking about how when he came here for an official visit to Lincoln, he was like, I was expecting cornfields, and I was expecting, not what he saw, which was a bustling city. And I think it's still interesting that perception is still out there amongst recruits. And that's something that the staff kind of needs to change. I think Frost tried to do that. They called it Calibraska. They try to make it like a hip, fun school. And I think there still is a perception among recruits where, Nebraska is a bunch of cornfields, and it's really not the case when you've been in Lincoln. So, yeah. But again, really well-spoken guy. Talked about that in the last video. I mean, I watched an interview with him at Stanford. Really, really good to listen to. So I was happy about that. The second guy, I want to bring up his stats really quick here, who we got is Billy Kemp, who is a massive get, another really nice get. He was awesome for Virginia when he played. Obviously, he is a wide receiver from Virginia. He didn't really have too much stats this year, but in 2021, and he was banged up this year, but in 2021, he had 700 yards, 6 touchdowns, 70 catches, and he's currently 10th all-time on UVA's career receiving yards. So again, 5'9", 170. And I was watching his film. I talked about this in the last video, but I was watching his film, and he really reminded me of Wan'Dale Robinson, just the way that UVA got him involved in the pass game. They're trying to get the ball in his hands. They got him on these little screens, end arounds. They had him in the backfield sometimes. And I think if Rule could really, and I don't know if the Duck R position will still stick around under Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield, but if it does, he is the ideal wide receiver to be there. So I really love that get. And again, those are the 2 transfer gets that we got this week. Quickly, I want to talk about some other guys. One being Micah Mazka, who honestly everybody thought we were going to get him. He was the offensive guard transfer from Baylor, and again, you talk to anybody, a lot of the insiders were surprised. He ended up committing to Florida, but again, this is a guy who was on a visit here last week. I talked about in the last video. I honestly thought he was probably most likely of the 3 to commit to us. And again, on Tuesday, he announced to Florida. a big shock. There wasn't any crystal balls to Florida. There was none of that. I just thought that was really interesting. And what I've heard is that Florida kind of stepped up in a big way when it came to the money, along with just kind of pulling him and saying, hey, we think at Florida you have a better chance to get to the league. And a lot of those older transfers, that's number one on their priority list. So another guy that I want to talk about, and if you've been on Husker Twitter recently, you've probably seen this a little bit, is Malik Hornsby. So Malik Hornsby committed to Texas State a couple days ago, and Nebraska fans all considered it kind of a miss. But it was understandable because we already got Jeff Sims in the class, and we already got Billy Kemp at that. We were about to get Billy Kemp, so if we wanted a quarterback wide receiver, it didn't matter. I think at the end of the day, he wanted to play quarterback, and Texas State was offering that. So, and that's why he went there. I think we were offering him a wide receiver spot. However, there's been a couple rumors going on that I want to debunk. There's a rumor going on that Malik Hornsby is in the UNL directory, student directory, and not in Texas State's. Just to quickly answer that, Malik Hornsby has been in our directory for weeks, and I can't tell you why, but I find it hard to believe that he'd be in our directory for like 2 weeks and then within this week commit Texas State. Like, it doesn't work like that. So I don't see him flipping. It doesn't really make sense. Maybe it happens, and if I do, I'll say I'm wrong. But the rumors going on that he's going to flip doesn't really make too much sense to me. A couple other guys we're going after I want to mention really quick. Tight end transfer from Georgia, Brett Seether. Absolutely need to go after him. Again, looking at his stats, nothing really there. He was not really a great recruit, but he was at Georgia. Not too much playing time this year. He just entered the portal after the national championship game. I'm going to pull up his stats really quick here. So, yeah, he had 3 catches this year, 1 touchdown. Nothing insane. Only 4 catches in his career. But that just adds another body to the tight end room, which in my opinion is the weakest unit on the entire team. So that'd be nice to have. Another guy who Sean Callahan actually mentioned today, who's potentially coming on a visit, is MJ Sherman, another guy from Georgia. Now, this is a guy who's a little bit different. Again, he was a class of 2020. He was a 5-star recruit. But he has played on special teams. He hasn't ever started at Georgia. But you like what you see there. He's 6'2", really big. He's at the outside linebacker spot, really explosive, and that's what I think we need. I said that in a previous video. I said, hey, we have a bunch of solid linebackers, but at the end of the day, we need some more athletic freaks when it comes to a linebacker position. We need guys like Levante David. That's what made Ernest Hausman so special, is the fact that we saw those shades in him that we had an athletic freak at linebacker that can make all those plays. Guys like Luke Reimer, as much as we love them, guys like Luke Reimer and Nick Henrich, they continuously get outrun by running backs. They continuously just show that they're not athletic enough compared to the top end linebackers that you see go high in the NFL draft and you see playing for Alabama and Georgia. So that's a guy who MJ Sherman could potentially be one of those guys. So, and MJ Sherman did get playing time in the national championship. So that's interesting that he entered the portal the day after he might be coming here. So that's basically the recruits. I want to get into the staff really quickly. There's 2 major things I want to talk about. Number 1, the salaries of all the staff came out today. I was kind of waiting on that. I was hoping it came out this week. It did. Well, okay. All the staff, with the exception of the 3 newest hires, Garrett McGuire, Dvorak at linebackers, and Bob Wager. So here they are. Wish I could put them on the screen here, but Marcus Satterfield, $1,400,000. Ed Foley, $500,000. CJ Barthel, roughly $300,000. Evan Cooper, roughly $700,000. Terrence Knighton, $400,000. Corey Campbell, strength and conditioning coach, by the way, $450,000. Tony White, $1 million even, and Dylan Raiola, $325,000. So, initial reaction, wow. They really stepped it up when it came to Marcus Satterfield and Tony White's contracts, both of them being $1 million coordinators. So it's the first time that's happened in Nebraska history. Marcus Satterfield, by the way, becomes the most highly paid coordinator in Nebraska football history. So fun fact there. I predicted that I didn't think we would be going over $5 million. I was wrong. Right now, based on my estimates, they still haven't put in 3 coaches, but we're about $6 million, evenly about $6 million. Again, still short of the $8 million budget that we had, but interesting to see that come out. I really don't have anything to say here. I think it's interesting that EJ Barthel is our least paid positional coach. He's saying at a defined $285,000. If you ask me, EJ Barthel could easily be our best positional coach. So that is really interesting that he is the least paid, but it's nothing to scoff at. It's still good money there. And yeah, so I thought that was interesting to mention. And another one is just kind of just mentioning that the coaches have been hot on the recruiting trail. I'm going to mention this later when it comes to Dylan Raiola, which we have a couple bits and tidbits about there. But Tony White was making rounds to Omaha today. He was at Omaha North. He was at West Side. He was at other places. Ed Foley, special teams coordinator, has been around Nebraska this week. I think it was EJ Barthel. EJ Barthel is recruiting up in the Northeast. So the entire staff, a lot of them are not in Lincoln right now. They're out going to high schools, recruiting. They'll love to see that. And especially when it comes to Tony White, he is trying to lock down Omaha. And there's a lot of good defensive players that are coming out of Omaha in the next couple classes, whether that is Caleb Benning from West Side, whether that's Tyson Terry from Omaha North. There's a bunch of guys there Christian Jones from West Side, a bunch of guys to keep watch on that are really good players from in-state. He's trying to lock those guys down early. But let's get into, I'll save Raiola for last. How about that? Zavier Betts really quickly. A lot of smoke's been going around with Zavier Betts that he's going to rejoin the team and that Rule wants him back and has been contacting him. I mentioned him in the last video. But again, here's my defined take on Zavier Betts. I think Zavier Betts is a really good player. Really solid player. I don't want to say really good player. I think he's a solid player. My issue with Betts is that I don't think if he comes back here, he's going to commit. And that's the problem. And I mean commit to everything. He can show up on Saturdays, but I don't know if he's going to commit to working on Monday through Friday. That's the problem with him. And that's the problem with him the second he stepped on campus here originally. He never learned the playbook. And the staff, Frost desperately wanted to get him on the field. Desperately wanted to get him on the field, and we could never get him on the field. Why? Because he didn't know any of the plays. And he didn't work hard enough. He didn't show up enough. He quit on the team multiple times. He didn't show up to practices. And I just don't see that getting better. We're talking about a guy who hasn't been at UNL since the spring semester. He had a minor drug charge earlier this year. He was working out Walmart in Bellevue during the fall. I mean, I don't know. And I wouldn't mind bringing him back as a walk-on. That's fine. But if you're bringing this guy back on scholarship, I think that's a massive mistake. Massive, massive, massive mistake. Especially for a guy who the reason why he's not here right now is because he couldn't, commit to doing everything outside of the field that makes players successful. So that's my take on Zavier Betts. I love Zavier Betts. I think he's a talented player, really do. And I was so sad when what happened and he left and the fallout there. But you can't bring him back now. It doesn't make sense, and you can't bring him back on scholarship. That's what I know. Another one, we have Janiran Bonner, wide receiver, announcing that he is coming back to Nebraska for the 2023 season. That was one that I was watching closely. He committed to Nebraska as a member of the 2020 class. Committed kind of late in the class, right when Mickey got here. He was a 4-star prospect. He was committed to Georgia Tech, and he flipped to us. So that was interesting. Personally, when I think of Janiran Bonner, I think that he is one of the most talented receivers. People throw around hyperboles a lot in the Nebraska fan base, and I try not to be one of those guys. But, and I mean this, I think Janiran Bonner is one of the most impressive wide receivers we've had from a physicality standpoint in a long time. He's 6'3", really fast, really good route running. I mean, you watch his tape in high school, and I'm not one to really buy into guys just on high school tape, but a lot of those traits that you have transfer over to the college game pretty easily, and he is going to be a stud this year, so I was really happy to have him back. And now I think the only thing left to talk about is Dylan Raiola. A lot of things to talk about when it comes to Raiola last week. He was saw at the championship game, TCU and Georgia. I think a fellow content creator on YouTube, Corn Crazed, took a picture with him. And that got Nebraska fans a little worried because Georgia obviously playing that game, and Georgia is it's Nebraska and Georgia butting heads right now for Dylan Raiola, and a lot of fans are like, oh shoot, he's there rooting for Georgia. Really want to clear that up. He was not there to root for Georgia. He was probably happy Georgia won, like, to be honest with you, because Georgia is one of his top schools. But if I'm being real, he was there because his sister also was there. His sister goes to TCU for volleyball, so. It's not like he went there out of his own way to watch Georgia play. Like, no, okay, it wasn't like, Georgia bought him tickets or something, like, and that's obviously against recruiting rules. But I just want to clear that up because there's a lot of speculation. Another thing is, I think on Tuesday, so after the national championship game, he got a couple of crystal balls, one from a Georgia insider, and also a massive one from Steve Wiltfong, and everyone knows how much people value Steve Wiltfong's crystal balls, obviously being the head of 24/7. And I really, and everyone was freaking out, saying, "Oh, it's over. He got crystal balls to Georgia." And I'm just telling people, calm down, okay? Dylan Raiola, again, people were throwing all the speculation out when Dylan Raiola decommitted from Ohio State, like he was going to come and commit to Nebraska the next day. Like, it wasn't going to happen. The entire thing with Dylan Raiola is that he's waiting until the spring, waiting to get those official visits done, and that's when he's going to commit. So he's going to go to Georgia. He's going to go to Nebraska for official visits, and that's when you got to make your impression. So there's no reason to complain and cry about the crystal balls. Now, it's irrelevant because he's not committing anytime soon. So I just really wanted to mention that. And the last thing is Matt Rule tweeted out one of his more decipherable tweets today. It was an airplane emoji, basically 5 stars emoji, and then desert emoji. Pretty obvious there. He's going to Arizona today to meet with Dylan Raiola, and then somebody at Inside Nebraska also reported, they basically confirmed that they're like, yeah, he is going to Arizona to meet with Dylan Raiola. So that is interesting, and he is. I think this is his second time going to Arizona to meet with Dylan Raiola, and honestly, it might be his third time, but I'm for sure it's the second, and within a matter of a month. So that tells you how big of a priority he is, and the whole staff is bought in. All I know is that I hope he is not in Margaritaville, if you know what I mean, when he is down there in Chandler, Arizona. So that's all I got to say there about Dylan Raiola, but don't freak out. Long time between now and when he commits, but the staff is, I really trust the staff to get it done. I trust the staff, and I think at the end of the day, Dylan Raiola wants to be a Nebraska Cornhusker, and I think that's what he'll be. So there it is, guys. That's a show for today. It was an interesting week, man. It was really an interesting week. Transfers, transfer misses, a lot of rumors going around, a lot of staff moves, and then, of course, Dylan Raiola, who gets the fan base pumped up and excited. So, yeah, if you enjoy the content today, if you enjoyed anything I talked about, please, please, please hit the like button and hit subscribe, and even comment, say what you like, say anything. Honestly, that'd be great. But again, thank you guys all for watching. This has been Nebraska Nightly. You can expect to see these kind of videos every single Friday here on the Wilson Dittman Sports channel. So, everyone, have a good night, and thank you for watching.